Hi there, I'm Tori and I will take you through the practice today. So today's class is going to be a Yin class. It's a class that is a lot slower. It's based on holding poses for 3 to 5 minutes and it allows us to get deeper into the body. It's about working with our fascia, our connective tissue, getting deep into the joints around ligaments and just kind of really working on our flexibility. So it's a nice kind of way to calm the mind. It's a nice way to kind of down-regulate the body. What I would suggest is grabbing either a yoga block or hardback book, something that you can put pressure on. Although Yin is about using gravity to let ourselves melt in towards and open our body, sometimes it's good to have something just to prop your head on, just to get yourself a little bit deeper. The other thing I would suggest is a bolster. Again, if you don't have a bolster, feel free to use blankets. Otherwise, you can also use pillows or cushions from your sofa. So it's more of just kind of like having something that you can just elevate the hips, but also it's kind of comfortable to just kind of fold the body over sometimes and give yourself a bit of space in there as well. So whatever's comfortable for you and whatever you have, you're able to do yoga at home with a yoga mat, sometimes even just a towel on the ground if you've got a carpet, just to give yourself some ability not to slide on the carpet, and any kind of props that you have around home. It doesn't have to cost very much. So our class today is predominantly around the hips, but there will be some shoulder opening exercises as well. So coming to start, what we'll do is we'll come into our breath, just to settle the body and to settle the mind. So if you want to sit cross-legged or kneeling or sitting onto a block or onto the bolster, feel free to do so. So what we'll do is we'll just come down in towards our seat. We'll just take a couple of deep breaths just to really settle in towards our physical self and just to get comfortable on the mat. So what we're doing here is just simply just giving ourselves a couple of moments just to down-regulate, to switch off from our day and to start to channel into how we feel. And when I say how we feel, it's how we feel physically, how we feel emotionally, and how we feel mentally. And these three bodies or sheaths known in yoga can have a lot of impact into how we move on the mat. So just checking in to see how we feel. Just starting to feel the breath coming in and out of the body. Starting to feel the chest rise and fall. Starting to feel the breath coming in and out of the nose. And just starting to feel the body just settle into your space. Knowing that the next 45 minutes to an hour of practice is your time on the mat. And allowing and honouring that time for yourself. Perfect, just coming into a couple of deep inhales just to really cleanse out the body. We're going to inhale deeply through the nose. We're going to pull that breath down in towards the sitting bones. We're going to open the mouth and sigh it out. Taking another deep inhale, breathing in through the nose, pulling it around the skull, down the spine. In towards the belly, we open the mouth and we sigh it out. One last lovely deep inhale, breathing in, pulling it around the skull, down the spine. Opening the mouth and simply sighing it out. And then just gently coming back into your own breath and into your own rhythm. And then slowly we're just going to open up the eyes. Perfect. So the first pose that we're going to come into is going to be our butterfly pose. It's a great pose to start with. Opens the hips, opens the lumbar spine. So our butterfly, we have the soles of the feet together. We take the knees out wide and we come into a forward fold. So where we are, we've got options. We can either sit ourselves onto a block, onto a bolster, and just have the knees out wide. But if we're taking our weight on towards a bolster, rather than having the sitting bones flat towards the floor, we want to create movement into the pelvis. So we start to tip the pelvis forward. And it's at that point that we start to feel that openness in towards the hips and the knees come out wide. So if we were to be on a block, we just simply take the sitting bones towards the front. So at the moment I'm sitting directly on. If I walk my sitting bones to the edge, the sitting bones come off and it's my muscles that are keeping me on the actual block, and we can use that space to tilt our pelvis more forward. So that's just something to think about if you're coming in towards this butterfly pose. Especially, it's good to elevate the hips, especially if you find that in order to come down, you're sitting in a space like this, and it feels like the stretch is coming from here rather than coming into the hips. So if we are able to create that sway into the hips, again, equally, if you want to take the legs a little bit further away, sometimes it can be easier than bringing the feet all the way forward. So it just depends on how you are with your anatomy. So wherever you are, we're going to take a big inhale. Just feeling the body. On the exhale, we just want to melt ourselves forward. So first of all, making sure that we've got that tilt in the pelvis. Slowly, if we can, we take the elbows towards the outsides of the knees. Hands can then come down towards the feet. Or if you want to, really releasing, hands come out towards the sides. For me to start with, I'm going to place my head on towards a block, and I will keep count and time holding this pose. So as we go deeper, I will slowly take the brick away and I'll be allowed to release my body further. Sometimes using props in our yin poses is nice because it gently just sets up the body to allow us to work deeper in towards our poses. And then as we work deeper, the body opens and we melt a little bit further into the pose. So we're going to hold this pose for about 4 minutes. And we want to sit in as stillness as possible. If we have any issues or any pain, we need to work out what that pain is. If it's sharp and if it's hot in sensation, then we move, we come out of the pose, we adjust, and if we can, we come back in. If the sensation is just of uncomfort, being uncomfortable, then we sit with that sensation and we see how long we can sit with it. The mind is very clever at telling us that we need to move. If it's not aware of how and what sensations or it's not used to us being in a certain pose, we can find that the body tells us to let go. So we're coming up to halfway into the pose. So if you want to go deeper, feel free to. If you've got the head on a block, maybe shifting it. It doesn't have to be a big change. It can be millimeters that we move. And those millimeters over time and coming back to our practice will allow us the ability to create more flexibility into the body. So we're coming into the last minute of the pose. So maybe trying, if you have had your head propped, maybe trying to release the prop and feel that stretch towards the back of the neck, or behind the ears, as you just let the gravity work its magic down in towards the back of the spine. Feeling the stretch in towards the adductors, to the inside of the thighs. And then slowly we're going to bring ourselves out of the pose. So keeping the chin tucked, if it's already tucked. Using the hands to just slowly bring yourself back in towards that seated position. So bring the head up, just allowing for the sensations to run through the body. We've been pulling the joints apart, letting that gravity work. So we want to really just allow ourselves to come back in towards the normal space. So again, taking the hands towards the outsides of the legs. And bring the legs up. If you just want to hold here for a moment, just to release in towards the thighs, feel free to. Otherwise, we're just going to take the legs out wide. And we're just going to slowly windscreen wipe the legs from side to side. So hands come behind us for a bit of support. And then gently opposite knee towards our opposite foot, just to feel a slow release in towards the body. So what we find here is that we're shutting down the kind of joint spaces, but we're also just working our body through golden syrup or treacle. And we're just kind of really kind of allowing that space to just adjust back into its normal space after the muscle's been working quite deeply. So the next pose that we're going to come into is going to be a cross-legged forward fold. So we have options here, depending on where you are with your practice. It can be a normal forward fold. If you're very tight into the hips, then kind of being aware, again, sitting onto a block and just giving yourself a little bit of height to create that tilt into the pelvis. If you want to go a little bit deeper, we try and make the heels or the feet directly below the knees, and then we'll come in towards that forward fold. Or if you want to, if it's available for you, we cross the legs and we take the knees on top of each other. If the knees are on top of each other, we want to make sure that the sitting bones are directly down towards the ground. And again, we come into that forward fold. It can be quite tight in towards the top here, into the top, almost at the top corner of our hips. And that can be due to alignment issues in towards the body. So I say issues, it's just a way in which we're all very different through our lifestyle and what we do throughout the day. So this one, I'm just going to come into a gentle, kind of the second level. I'm going to take the heels underneath, but being aware of my sitting bones. So again, rather than just rolling forward, I want to almost wiggle my sitting bones. So kind of placing my hands in towards my feet and almost kind of making my sitting bones out towards the back of the room. So I'm going to take an inhale. Exhaling, I'm just gently going to walk the hands forward. So again, we have the options. We can either take the head on top of the block, so we kind of find that release into the legs. And we're looking for a stretch in towards our glutes. And they come in towards the IT band, in towards the side of the leg. So with this pose, especially, we're finding that I find that kind of our left and our right is very different. They kind of change quite a bit, just depending on what we're doing throughout the day, what kind of practice I've done throughout the week. So it's kind of a nice way to check in with how the hips are. If we spend a lot of time at our desk throughout the week, it can be a place of pain or discomfort. So it's just being aware of that space. Again, we're going to hold here for about 4 minutes. So we're really focusing in on the stillness within the pose, stillness within the body, and really allowing ourselves just to make space through the breath and also into our physical space. Feel free at any time when you feel that the body has let you or is allowing you to go deeper, then use that space. We want to make sure that we find the edge of the pose and we're not going too deep. Sometimes we can go too deep into a pose and that's fine. We pull ourselves out slightly. But the beauty of Yin Yoga is finding that practice, that borderline comfort of uncomfort, and then holding in that space, breathing through it. So with our Yin practice, the slow practice, we're able to just think about how we are when we move slowly. And we're able to reassess why we move so quickly. So when we hold the pose for a period of time, really check in with why or what your urges are to move. So we should really only move if we're getting severe pain, or if we're feeling really uncomfortable or claustrophobic. Otherwise, the only reason why we should move is that the body is starting to open and is allowing you to go deeper. Got 15 seconds left into this pose. So really feeling that out through the back of the body. Perfect. So slowly we're going to walk our hands back in towards us. Again, if you've had the head released, we let the head stay where it is, and it's only when you get to the top that you release. We hold, just being aware of that space and sensations. So this time round, we're going to come in towards our sleeping swan, and then we'll come in towards the other side with both the legs. So whichever leg you have forward, we're going to keep in that space. Doesn't matter if the knee is parallel towards the front of the mat or not, and still honouring the fact that we're moving very slowly through the practice. So you want to keep that leg where it is, and we take the leg that was crossed behind, whether that was our left or right, and we take it towards the back of the mat. So we're going to come in towards our swan pose. We take the hands down towards the front, we lift ourselves up just slightly, and we rearrange that front leg. So for me, it's more comfortable to have the foot towards me because my hips and the alignment in my hips won't allow me to have the leg flat towards the front. It's also good to be a reminder that it may never get to that space. So we want to just find Again, that's stretching towards the glutes, which we had. If you want to, feel free to place the block just underneath. We want to be looking to keep the hips as level as possible. And we're finding that stretching towards the outside of the glutes, around here from the hip bone through the glute coming across. So wherever you are, again, we're going to hold in towards this pose for about 4 minutes. Option 2, if you want to, release the forehead down. You can release the arms out towards the front, hands onto the mat, whatever's more comfortable for you. And again, we're just breathing in towards that space and towards the glutes. The power of the breath is huge throughout our yin practice. If we go too deeply into a pose, we either hold our breath or we breathe very short and sharp. So it's being aware of this as we go deeper. And if you find yourself holding the breath, maybe just taking a couple of breaths before you move. So you're able to hold that pose on that edge for a little bit deeper before you pull yourself out. By having slow, steady breaths, we tell the parasympathetic nervous system to start to kick in. And this is our rest and digest nervous system. It allows the body to relax and go deeper. And we're coming into halfway into the pose. The other thing we can do with the breath is placing the breath into the body. So those areas where you can feel the stretch. If you place the breath intentionally with the mind, it will create the blood vessels to dilate and create more energy in that space, allowing more blood to flow. With more blood flowing to the area that we're stretching, allows the stretch and the flexibility in the muscle to go deeper. We're coming into the last minute of the pose. The last 20 seconds. And then slowly we're going to bring ourselves out. So we're just going to bring ourselves onto our fronts. We're just going to tuck our right toes, or whichever toes you have at the back, hands underneath the shoulders. And just gently taking ourselves on towards our bellies, crossing the hands over on top of each other as we find the release in towards the body. And we give ourselves a little bit of a shake from side to side. Now as we get here, we'll feel a sensation the deep sensation of blood flowing back in towards that space around the glutes. And that sensation is a really kind of a good, it's basically where all the meridian lines, and allowing that energy, that chi to run through it. So sometimes it's quite nice to sit still and just feel those sensations come back in towards the body. And then gently we're going to come in towards the other side. So just pushing ourselves up, maybe coming through a child's pose first, just to give ourselves a little bit of relax through that lumbar spine if there's any issues. And then gently we're just going to come in towards that pose, those poses onto the other side. So for me, I had the left leg in front last time, so I'm going to take the right leg in front. So again, you might feel the difference between the left and the right, and that's totally fine. So just having the feet, so you're trying to get the heels directly below the knees. So we're having that centralness into the body. Again, we want to work with just rolling out those sitting bones towards the back, so we kind of have the ability to tilt the tailbone towards the front. Towards the back. We're able to pivot the pelvis towards the front. So coming in towards this original forward fold first. Again, doesn't matter where we come to, we're just finding that release into the body. Whether you have a block up high to begin with, or your book, whatever it is that you feel, just opening in towards the side. On the right hand side, the opposite side to the camera, we're feeling a stretch through here in towards our glutes. And that stretch comes down all the way through in towards the IT band, in towards the outside of the knee. So we're holding here for 4 minutes. And again, whenever you feel the body start to open, just allow yourself to melt a little bit deeper in towards that space. As mentioned, using the breath just to release yourself a little bit deeper. So maybe on the inhale, just whisper in the mind, let. On the exhale, just remind yourself to go. So you're letting go. As you say that mentally to yourself, you'll find that just somewhere, somehow the body just starts to release and relax a little bit more. So we're coming in towards the last minute of the pose. So again, just wondering where the mind is and wondering where the breath is. Don't change anything, just sit in that stillness And just observe where the mind is telling you, where that edge of the pose is, and where your breath is. As we're getting into the hips, it might be that you feel space in towards there, or you might feel it getting a little bit tight. So just giving your jaw a little bit of a wiggle can also just send messages in towards that space and towards your hips, and allow you to relax and let go a little bit further. So we've got the last 15 seconds in the pose before we come in towards our sleeping swan. So gently, when you're ready, just lifting yourself up again. Doesn't matter how fast or slow it is, we just walk the hands in. We keep the head up as last. And just letting the sitting bones melt down towards the ground. So we're going to keep the front leg towards the front of the mat. We lean over towards the side and we release the left leg towards the back. Hands come down towards the mat in front of us. We tuck the toes at the back, so we come in towards our half plank, or our plank pose, and then slowly, when you're ready, and as you can see again, my leg is not parallel towards the front, my anatomy won't let it. So we just find that space. As long as you're getting that stretch in towards the glute, then you're in towards the right place. For me, I prefer to place the block sometimes underneath that glute. It just gives us a little bit of height, and it gives me the ability just to wiggle around into that pose. So I find the edge, and then I'm able to surrender into the pose at whatever depth I feel I need to. So again, we're holding here for 4 minutes. And just coming into that space as we go deeper in towards that right hip. We have what we talk about in yoga as our monkey mind. And the monkey mind we can find, it will tell us to move, it will tell us, why should I be holding this space? What's it doing? What's the benefit? And what we need to do with that monkey mind is just surrender. Surrender into that space. And try and work out what it is that the monkey mind is really telling us what to do. When we find that itch onto our elbow or the hair or on the end of our nose, it's just the mind telling us to move. It's recognizing sensations in the body, which normally you would have ignored, and you wouldn't be in a space where you're settled and you can feel it. But as you start to slow down, the mind starts to pick up on the sensations that you in everyday life wouldn't necessarily be taking on board, because the monkey mind needs to think about something to do. So as you start to tune out of everything else in your day, it starts to tune in with the sensations on the skin. And over time, through the yoga practice, we're able to calm that mind chatter even in the sensations, and understand that yes, there is a sensation, but there's nothing that I need to do about it. So as you hold, the body will naturally go deeper. Gravity will work its magic. And slowly start to open up the body a bit further. Sometimes this can become too intense, and that's totally fine. Other times, just see whether you can sit through it and breathe through that space. So we've got 1 more minute, just breathing through. "30 more seconds of the pose." Perfect. And gently we're just going to pull ourselves out. So hands come under the shoulders. If you have a block or whatever it is that you're leaning on, maybe removing it before moving. And we're just going to slowly just come down in towards gentle seat. Wherever you are, we're just going to take the knees up towards the sky and just gently windscreen wipe from side to side. So just creating a little bit of space in towards that movement. Otherwise, feel free to just come down onto your fronts like we did before between the last ones and just feel that stillness in the body. So the next pose that we will be doing will be coming onto our backs, onto our front, sorry. So we will be coming in towards our Sphinx pose. So slowly coming out, releasing as we move slowly. We've been opening up those hips. And now we're going to come and just open in towards the front of the body. So coming into our Sphinx pose, we're going to have the elbows underneath the shoulders. Palms come down towards the ground, and we're just going to gently pull our chest through our shoulders. So it's as if we're being pulled from our sternum, the middle part of our chest, through towards the front. Again, this pose can be, sometimes it can be too much onto the neck, so it might be that you want to release your forehead down, and that's totally fine. If there's any issues in towards the lumbar spine, if it's too much in towards this space, then also just engage the belly button and pull it in towards the spine. So we're kind of just lengthening out through the bottom of the back, so it becomes less intense, less curvature in towards that space. So if we have the forehead down towards a brick, make sure that we're not doming into the shoulders at the front. We still want to have that proudness. So we still have the openness in towards the front of the chest. Wherever you are, we're holding for 3 minutes. And when we get to the 3rd minute, you've got the option to stay where you are, or if you want to, you can come into a deeper pose in towards your seal. The only problem is with having a block is you get your head, it becomes heavy and you start to get lines imprinted into your forehead, which is totally fine when you're practicing at home. Coming into the last minute of the pose. So gently we're going to come, if you want to, stay in your Sphinx. If you want to come to your seal pose, we take the hands a little bit wider to the top corners of the mat, and we just simply start to lengthen in towards the arms. Again, if this is too much in towards your lumbar spine, then pull yourself out and come back into Sphinx. If it's not and it's okay in towards the body, into the spine, then we're going to hold here for a minute. Just using that breath. Again, it's up to you to have the neck surrendering down so you get the stretch, or finding that length in towards the back of the neck. We've got 20 seconds left into the pose. And then gently we just release ourselves down onto our elbows. We're going to come back onto our front. So hands on top of each other, and we just find our forehead on top of our hands. Any issues, just giving ourselves a little bit of a sway from side to side to release in towards that lumbar spine. And then just gently into stillness. We're going to open into the shoulders a little bit more. So we're going to take our left hand out towards the side. We want to make sure that we keep our left shoulder down towards the ground. And we want to pull ourselves, so we come onto our side. We have the right hand, let me do it the other way around. So we've got the right hand out towards the side. We keep the right shoulder down towards the ground. If you want to, using a block or a pillow to place underneath your head. And we want to take the left hand under the shoulder, so we push ourselves on towards our side. Option 2, like I say, have your head onto a block. It just opens in towards, gives you a little bit more space above the shoulder. If you come onto your side, sometimes it's a bit more comfortable, just take the knee up towards the sky and just using that hand just to make sure that we have that openness in towards the front of the body. So for this pose, we're going to hold for 3 minutes. And if you are quite open into the shoulders, feel free to play around with the alignment of the back hand. So if you want to take it up higher at a diagonal, feel free to. For me, it's quite hard to open it in towards that part of the shoulder. Or if you want to, feel free to bring your arm in towards cactus. That again also gets into other parts in towards the shoulder joint. So despite it only being a shoulder opener pose, by moving the shoulder around, we get into the different muscles within and creating different space. Coming into halfway into the pose. So just noticing again where your mind is going with the practice, where your breath is going with the practice. Sometimes it's nice just to close down the eyes and just to feel the sensations in the body. And really understand what's going on inside that physical self. So we've got half a minute left into the pose before we move straight in towards the other side. Perfect. So we're just going to come out of the pose gently. So we put the weight in towards the left hand. We lower the knee if it's lifted, and we just gently come down onto our front. So we release that arm back in center. If you want to, just giving yourself a moment just to release in towards that shoulder joint. Again, remembering that we're moving through treacle because we don't want to put any extra issue or release that joint in any way after we've been opening it for so long. So we're going to come straight into the other side. Left arm comes long. Hand comes down next to the body, and I slowly lift myself up onto the side. So I find it easier to have the leg forward or the leg straight, and then I have my knee up towards the sky. Any issues in towards the medial or the scapula in towards the inside of the body, just pull yourself out of the pose and just readjust in towards that space. So again, we're holding for 3 minutes into this pose. We're coming in towards the last minute of the pose. So just seeing if the body's opening up just a little bit further, just a millimeter. Whether you feel that you're not got any sensations, whatever it is, just kind of being aware and observing that body. Last 30 seconds into the pose. Perfect. And slowly bring the knee down, lengthening leg out towards the front of the mat. And then we slowly bring ourselves back in towards our fronts. So taking the hands on top of each other, giving ourselves a little bit of a sway from side to side, maybe a little bit of a wiggle through the shoulders, whatever feels good as you just find that release in towards our body. So gently we're going to take the hands under the shoulders. We're going to release ourselves and we're going to find our wide leg child's pose. So the legs come out wide. Forehead comes down towards the mat and the hands reach out towards the front. So we just find that release in towards the body into the hips. Maybe just giving ourselves a gentle sway from side to side just to release the muscles through the forehead as we just find a little bit of ease. Amazing. So we're going to come in towards our final pose. We're going to come in towards a heart opener, so really opening in towards the front of the body. Coming in towards the same legs that we started with, so our butterfly pose. For me, I'm going to use my bolster. If you have cushions, then pardon me, feel free to roll the cushions up or squidge them up so they kind of come in line under the shoulders. Your shoulders don't have to be lifted very far. Equally, a beach towel or a blanket kind of rolled up can give you enough space between the shoulder blades into this part here. And that will just kind of open up and allow the body just to melt down in towards that space a little bit further. So we take the soles of the feet together, knees out wide, and we just gently maneuver ourselves. We don't want to have too much of an arch into the lower spine. It can cause a little bit of tension in towards there, so being aware of that kind of space that it can create. And then gently just finding that space and melting down in towards the ground. So I'm just going to hold here. We'll hold here for 3 minutes. So just allowing that space. Again, if there's any issues with the legs, knees out towards the side, feel free to either place some blocks underneath so you kind of have the support. If you feel it's not enough, feel free to just relax the hands, or again, putting the blocks on top. So you just get a little bit more weight in towards the legs that just kind of melts the body a little bit further. Or again, if it's just too much, taking the legs out towards the front and just concentrate on opening up the arms. So the arms, again, you can have the arms on top of the thighs just to give a bit of weight. You can take the arms out wide next to you, so the shoulder blades are flat towards the bolster or the cushions. Sometimes I like to just have the arms open and just kind of relaxing here. It's a kind of deep in towards the front of the pecs, in towards the front of the shoulder. And it's just nice to feel everything just slowly open up a little bit further. Otherwise, another option, taking the hands together above, and again you feel it kind of lower in towards the pecs and towards the side of the boob, or kind of into the front of the body. So whichever option you feel like moving into. Sometimes it can feel that you're hitting that edge, or you're getting a little bit too deep. And that's fine. Maybe in this pose you just find a different variation and you hold there for a couple of moments. Again, like I said at the beginning of practice, our Yin practice is about observing the body and about observing our space that we're in. Perfect, we've got 30 more seconds into the pose. So wherever you are, just finding that release and letting yourself melt. Amazing. So we're going to come out of the pose. If you've got your arms just rested, maybe taking them up over the head, and then gently just bring the arms back on front of the chest. Giving yourself a moment to release and adjust, and then gently taking the hands towards the outsides of the knees. Bring the knees together, and then slowly just coming down onto your side. So you're releasing yourself away from the block, around from that heart opener, and then we remove the bolster out towards the side and we come in towards our Savasana. So wherever you are, we've been opening up the body, finding that flexibility. So maybe giving the knees in towards the chest, giving yourself a little bit of a shake from side to side just to release through the muscles in the spine. And then when you're ready, feet come wide off the mat, palms come wide and face upwards. And we find our final resting pose, our Savasana. So we close the eyes. And again, like we have done in our yin practice, we melt in towards the mat. Just noticing nicely how the body is down regulated. As we're practicing at home, feel free to stay in your savasana and just enjoy that space. Otherwise, start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. Taking the arms towards the front of the room, feet towards the back, giving yourself a lovely big stretch. And then gently knees in towards the chest to give yourself a lovely big hug. Releasing yourself over to the left or the right hand side. And just holding in fetus just for a moment, just finding that release through the body as we're supported through the side. We ground down through the right hand and we bring ourselves in towards a comfortable seated position on the mat. We keep the eyes closed and just take a moment to notice how the body feels, how the mind feels, and how the breath feels. Slowly we bring the hands into prayer in front of the heart. May the light in me honour the light in you. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me for that yin practice. I hope you really enjoyed opening in towards the hips and towards the shoulders, kind of finding ourselves a little bit more in the physical body. Got any questions, any comments, please do put them into the comment box. And other than that, I will get back to you. Otherwise, have a wonderful week.